Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend. That was said by Albert Camus. Welcome to Motivational Monday Live Show with me, your host, The Prince. And today, it's the first motivational show for April 2022. I'm so excited about this month because it's the fourth month of the year. And I believe that this month, it's going to be better, it's going to be greater, it's going to be awesome, it's going to be wonderful. And for you to succeed in this month, there is one thing that is very important. There is one thing that you need, and that is relationship. And so today, we are dealing with a very interesting subject that is titled The Secret of Happy Relationships. And with me in the studio is my dear friend, Tim Kellis, all the way from the United States of America. Tim is a great speaker. He is an author, and he has done a lot of things. He's a great achiever. In fact, I watched one of his videos on YouTube where he was speaking like 13 years ago. And I was like, wow, this is a legend. And I'm glad because he's in the studio with me right now. Welcome, Tim Kellis. Oh my God, I can't hear you, Tim. I wonder why. I'm supposed to hear, so I don't know why. Or maybe I should try my earpiece. I don't know. Or is it from your end, Tim? And it's like Tim can hear me very clearly. Wow. Sometimes these tech things, they happen. Oh my God, what do we do? Hello, Tim. No, I can't. I can't hear you. So try to say something, Tim. I can hear anything, man. Okay, and maybe we should start afresh. Let's start afresh, Tim. Let's start afresh. Let me book the studio again. Yeah. Let him come back and let's see. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I
Oh,
can.
geez. Don't know what that
Yeah.
was. Sorry about that. Little delay here, but we've got audio now. I apologize immensely for whatever happened.
Wow.
I can hear you. I can hear you. I
Good.
can
I
hear
can hear
you.
you too.
Y- yes. Wow. That's great, Tim. So, how are
That's
you, Tim?
crazy. I am doing fantastic. How about yourself? It's Monday morning here, or Monday at noon now here in Florida.
Yeah. Over here, it's Monday evening already.
I understand. Yeah, we're in different time zones. Exactly.
Oh,
So, do you go
yeah.
by the Prince or John Bull?
Oh, I prefer the Prince because it's easier for people to call it. When I go to different countries, they tell me it's easy to call the Prince than the other one. So,
The Prince it is. I don't have a problem with that at all.
thank you, Tim. And you are such a great speaker. I saw your video 13 years ago when you were interviewed, and that was amazing. How long have you been speaking, Tim?
Well, I mean, I've been speaking my whole adult life. My background, I was a Wall Street analyst. So, as a Wall Street analyst, you're presenting to investors all the time. So, my adult life has been speaking. I'm just
Wall
speaking
Street
now on
analyst, so which
relationships.
means you know a lot about money, Tim.
I have an MBA, I have an engineering degree, landed on Wall Street. I'm very familiar with finance.
Wow, you're very familiar with finance, but why is it that you talk more about relationships?
Well, at the height of the market in 2000, I had actually connected with this girl that I had known for 8 years. She was in my same circle of friends in Dallas. She always had a boyfriend, I always had a girlfriend, but we got together when we weren't going out with anybody and we fell in love big time. Quickly, going to spend the rest of our lives together. But then we started fighting. And when
Hmm.
we went to the marriage therapist and I realized the marriage therapist wasn't helping, that I decided to figure out what we could do to learn how to create lifelong marriages. So I took on this mission about 20 years ago of figuring out how couples can come together successfully. And this is actually much more important work than working on Wall Street because we in the United States at least we have a 50% divorce rate. Half of all couples that get married in this country ended up filing for divorce, ended up getting divorced.
Wow, 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 wow. Relationships are facing a lot of issues, you know. And you see, I believe that relationship is the connecting dot for success, for business, for wealth, for government, for education, for anything in this world. I believe that relationship is the connecting because if when there is no relationship, any other thing cannot work. It takes, you know, even having the ability to relate properly with people for one to succeed, for one to make money, for one to do well in business, for one to be a good entrepreneur, for one to be a good negotiator. So I believe that relationship is key. So how significant do you think relationship is in all of this?
Oh, I completely agree with you. The relationship between husband and wife provides the cornerstone of our society. When a husband and wife are not getting along, the social consequences of that, not only for them, but for their children and their children's children, are significant. And when couples get along, their children grow up in a healthy environment, their children grow up with a healthy mindset. It's absolutely huge. And what you're referring to, which is even more important from certain aspects, is having a supportive spouse. If your spouse is not supportive of you, and I see that often in marriages, when your spouse is not supportive of you, that makes the marriage and then life in general that much more difficult. Which is basically what you're talking about in business. If your
Yes.
wife isn't supporting you or your husband's not supporting you in business, how are you supposed to succeed? But when your spouse is supporting you, what you ultimately learn, the Prince, is what I teach couples is how to take on the world instead of taking on each other. because most couples
Ah,
are stuck in doing this. They're taking on each other, and they can't get their head out of their fights that they have with each other in order to be able to look at the bigger picture, which is everything else going on in their life.
oh my God, that's powerful, Tim. That's so great right there. Thank you for that.
Oh, it's
And
this whole thing is very powerful. Yeah.
hmm, and I want to ask you, Tim, how do you develop or how do you get a happy relationship when you are not, in good terms with that person? Maybe they have hurt you, maybe they have done something to you, and then how do you get along?
The reason why relationships are successful is because couples get along. The reason why relationships are unsuccessful is because couples don't get along. It boils down to conflict resolution. And the solution to conflict resolution is equality. The way I explain it to Prince is, say you and I start a business together. Okay, you and I are
Hmm.
going to go into business together and we have a conflict. Okay, say I'm the accountant and you want to buy a $5,000 computer and we can't afford it. How are you and I going to solve that problem? Logically, we're going to do it where you understand my perspective and I understand your perspective. And we're going to come to a conclusion that's in the best of both interests. When you create a relationship based on equality, both win in the relationship. Okay. But the problem that you're talking about is when disagreements, because if you want to buy a computer that we can't afford, that's a disagreement. Okay. We have a conflict. Okay. But what you're talking about is when disagreements turn to arguments.
Hmm.
And what I do is I teach couples the components of an argument. It turns out there is a process that we go through mentally that leads to an argument. It begins with an insecurity, okay, which is a fear or anxiety. Say your mom and dad got divorced. Okay, you are now potentially afraid of your marriage ended. You develop what I call a relationship prejudice. You now, if we use our example of your parents get divorced, you now have created a prejudice against marriage because of the fear that your parents introduced to you when they got divorced. That fear is what leads to the prejudice, which then leads to being judgmental, which then leads to being angry. So what I'm doing is I'm connecting the dots between fear and anger. If your wife were to get mad at you, DePrince, and you were to realize that the reason why she's mad at you is because she's afraid, you can now deal with the fear, which is a background issue, not the anger, which is today's issue. When you understand the relationship between fear and anger, it introduces a psychological understanding of your marriage. It helps you understand why your partner got mad at you or why you got mad at your partner. So that's what I'm talking about. If you can understand why your partner's getting angry at you, you'll find out you had nothing to do with it. They're getting mad at your behavior. Couples fall in love with their partner's character traits. They fall out of love with their partner's behavior. So if you're focused on your partner's behavior and then you get angry at your partner's behavior, you're actually projecting from your upbringing. The biggest influence on a marriage is your relationship with your parents, because that's where you first learn about love. And if they taught you something unproductive, then you'll bring that into your own marriage. So it's understanding the psychological dynamics between a husband and wife. Does that make
Wow.
sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Tim. Please, in case my phone goes off because it's like the temperature is getting heated, in case it goes off, kindly continue. Okay, I will be back in
Okay.
case it happens.
Okay. No
Okay,
worries. No
so
worries.
we're talking about relationships. Many people are sad and they are living sad lives because they are not able to get along with their partners. They are not able to get along with their business partners. They are not able to get along with their boss. They are not able to get along with people that they are working with.
That's not why they're
So they,
sad.
you said,
That's not why they're sad.
okay, yeah. So tell me,
They're sad from their upbringing.
they are sad from what?
Their upbringing, their parents, their childhood. If you have to be happy with yourself first before you could be happy in a relationship. And if you're not happy
Ooh.
with yourself, remember, you're in love with your partner, right? Your partner's not the one making you unhappy. Okay, it's something in your
Wow.
background that's making you unhappy. One of the things you learn to Prince when you mature as an adult is you cannot upset me. Okay, I don't get angry. There's nothing you could ever do to me, Prince, to upset me. Okay, because I'm a good guy. I'm happy with myself. I live a moral life. I'm good. I'm developing into a mature individual. When you develop into a balanced ego is not when you're better than anybody else. It's when you're better than you used to be. And when you learn that concept, what you realize is that you are the only one that defines who you are. If somebody else is still defining who you are unhappy. But when you learn that you're the only one that defines you, what I mean by that is I can decide whether to let somebody upset me or not. Nobody can upset you. You can decide whether to let them upset you or not. Unfortunately, when people get upset, they work in a more unconscious mindset. So they're not aware that they're letting somebody upset them. But when you're dealing with somebody who's comfortable with themselves, you can't upset them, no matter what you do. Exactly.
Team, that's powerful, I tell you. Yeah. That's a good one. So the reason why people have problem with their relationships, with their marriage, with their business, is not because of somebody out there. It's because there is an imbalance within them.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Okay, you have to learn what it means to be happy with yourself. And when you learn what it means to be happy with yourself, nobody else can influence that.
So when you are happy with yourself, then you can be happy with your spouse, then you can be happy with your boss, then you can be happy with whosoever you're working with or dealing with or relating with.
And let me explain that to you. Okay?
This is powerful, Tim. I love it.
My parents were very strict with me. Okay, my parents have 4 kids. They were strict with all of them. My dad is no longer around. He knows I love him and I respect him. But if you were to call up my mom right now and you were to ask my mom about parenting her children, she will tell you I was strict on my kids. She tells it to me all the time. But the point is I went to my 20-year high school reunion. And I made some comment to a former classmate of mine of my parents, and he looked at me and goes, "Oh, that's right, you had the strict parents." That comment shocked me because I realized that when I was in high school, I never looked at anybody else's perspective. When I was in high school, it was only me. I only thought about myself. That's how we all are when we're kids. When you're a child, the only thing that matters to you is you. Part of the maturing process is when you can actually open up and understand the other person's perspective. The biggest problem in marriage, quite honestly, is because one cannot understand the other person's perspective. And that's because they haven't matured to the point where they can see outside of their own situation. Okay, maturing is a mental process. Okay, and if you can't understand it from your partner's perspective, let me tell you what I mean by that. Okay, do you get mad at slow drivers, Prince?
Slow drivers? Not often.
We do in this country. In the United States, we're hustle and bustle, man. We have road rage. We have all kinds of stuff. I used to get mad at slow drivers until I had an epiphany. And that epiphany was when I realized that the other driver was driving someplace too. When I was able to sit in the other driver's seat and understand it from their perspective, they're going someplace too. In fact, in the United States, a lot of us, when we're kids, we read a book called To Kill a Mockingbird. And there's one line in that book that changed my life. And that line is, if you want to understand a man, you have to walk in his shoes.
Hey!
And I live that every day of my life. I am always thinking about the other person's perspective. That is a habit that I've created within myself that allows me to understand what's going on around me clearly. But if you cannot understand what's going on in your relationship from your partner's perspective, how are you supposed to solve any problems in your relationships? You can't. It's all about you.
Hey,
Well, you know, in an argument, here's an argument. I am right 100%. You are wrong 100%. No, I'm
wow.
right 100% and you're wrong 100%. That's called an argument. Arguments are control mechanisms. The reason why relationships are unsuccessful is because of control. One or both are trying to control the relationship. And when you eliminate control, where there are no distinctions, there can be no superiority. Perfect equality affords no temptation for abuse or control. A very, very profound concept. That's what you're trying to figure out in your relationship.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
It takes a minute for all
Wow.
that to sink in, but this is what I'm talking about. We can figure out how to bring two people together successfully if they were only to learn that neither of them is in charge. Exactly. Think about that. There's a peace in your relationship when it's based on equality. There's havoc and chaos in your relationships when one or both are trying to fight for control. That's where the problem comes from.
My God, this is amazing. Tim, you are such a great speaker. I tell you, you are awesome. I'm
Thank you.
so glad to have you in the show today. I love it, when I hear something of value. And still, Tim, you are giving me value today. You are giving Africa value. Those that are going to watch this and those that will watch the replay, this is valuable information. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Tim.
I appreciate it. Well,
Now,
again, I'm using my Wall Street background because I'm very analytical to explain to people the concepts that they need to understand in order to have a successful relationship.
mm, mm, wow. Now, how do we reconcile when you know that you yourself, it's the problem in that relationship? So how do you deal with yourself to become a better person in for others?
Well, the most important thing to learn, the difference between somebody who is intelligent and somebody who is ignorant, is one of them knows they're ignorant. Think about that for a second. It's the person who thinks they know everything that's the ignorant person in the relationship. Because what you're dealing with an argument is somebody who thinks they know everything. That's the problem. And if you were to realize that you don't know everything, you're supposed to approach your relationship from a platform of curiosity.
Hey, and curiosity. Sorry, please, you will continue, okay? And curiosity is the willingness to know more, to hear from that person, to receive from that person. Curiosity. Wow, I love that.
That's what you need to learn. You need to learn to understand your partner's perspective. Again, you want to buy a $5,000 computer and we can't afford it. I'm going to ask you why. Why do you want to buy an expensive computer? And you're going to explain, well, because I need it for this. That's the same in relationships. I'm going to understand it from your perspective, and you're going to understand it from my perspective. That's what you're trying to figure out. Exactly. It's important to understand this. Again, because our planet, you and I are in different countries. Our whole planet is strife with couples that are not working out. We have an epidemic of divorce in this planet. Right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Wow.
that's what we're trying to figure out. How to bring two people together that fall in love. You have to be in love at the beginning. You have to really love this person at the beginning. If it's not true love, you're not going to want to put in the effort to. The love is vulnerability. Vulnerability is the fear of getting hurt. When you meet this person and fall in love with this person, what you do is you get over that wall of fear. At the beginning, it's called the false facade. You're putting your best foot forward as you're supposed to. You're trying to impress each other. But what couples need to learn is how to be vulnerable about those things from their past that they may not be so proud of. Say you were molested as a child, the prince. Think about this. You were molested as a child, and if you're not comfortable going to your wife and explaining that to her, because more than likely, if you're molested as a child, you have significant problems with intimacy. Think about that. Okay, so we just lost him. So let me go ahead and expand on this. Okay, so if you were molested as a child, you are not comfortable opening up to intimacy. Okay, you have to be able to bring that up and discuss that with your partner. And in order to do that, you have to create a judgment-free zone in your marriage so that you can bring up things and your partner's not going to think less of you. This is where the whole notion of true love comes in. If you and your partner are on solid grounds, then you're able to bring up anything and your partner's not going to use it against you. Because this is where the problems come from. People are afraid of talking about things from their past because they're afraid their partner will think less of them. They're afraid their partner will use it against them. They think it's a character flaw on their part. It's actually not. The only reason why I could say I have solved the marriage problem is because I forgave my parents when I was 25 years old. There's a forgiveness process that you go through when you're growing up that allows you to see who you are for what you are, as opposed to through the lens of your childhood. In fact, one of the things I realized after I forgave my parents is I looked at my upbringing as an asset instead of a liability, because my parents did a pretty good job with me. I'm not in prison. I've got a moral compass. I've done successful in my career. If you can't look at yourself for who you are, you can't look at your partner for who they are. This is where the whole notion of codependence comes on. Codependence is when you require your partner to behave in a way that's subjective to your perspective and not objective to the benefits of the marriage. And when you're doing that, you're expecting your partner to change for your benefit, and they have to give up little bits about themselves. In fact, let me give you an example. So one of my passions is music. I have been listening to music since I was a kid. And the girl that I fell in love with, that I'm talking about, that led to doing all this, she loved, my interest is alternative rock music, and she loved jazz music, which is no big deal, except I was not allowed to listen to my music. She was trying to control me. I was not allowed to listen to my music when I was around her. And the point is after we broke up, guess what I started doing? I started listening to my own music. I had lost that part of myself because she took that away from me because of some control issues. And I don't get into the details of that, but this is when one is trying to control the other, they're taking little pieces away from their partner, bits at a time, until their partner eventually loses sight of who they are. That's why you hear a lot of people, when their marriage ends or when their relationship ends, they get to go get themselves back because they gave up so much of their own individuality to please their partner from their partner's subjective perspective. And we have to learn how to get around that. We have to learn how to make sure that we address the fears in the relationship. One of the things that you learn is that fear and love cannot coexist in the same room. The goal is not to find love. The goal is to find the barriers that you have inside of yourself that's keeping you from fully opening up to love. So what you realize, and so to print your back now, so to answer your question, okay, the Chinese have a saying, and that saying is that history is a mirror. So what happens when you look in a mirror? You see yourself, right? And if you're trying to see who you are, how do you understand who you are? You understand who you are from your background. From those things that you've learned, that you've done, that you've succeeded, that you've failed, all of these things that you've gone through in your lifetime, that has come to define who you are. And the reason why you fall in love, the reason why you have a significant other, the reason why you are in that relationship is for your partner to be your mirror. And all I mean by that, Prince, is I'm trying to get people from doing this, from blaming their partner, to doing this to find out what they contributed to the problem. And once you do that, it becomes clear on what the problem is and how to solve it. So I know we lost you there for a bit. I was just explaining the whole notion of why, when your relationship's not working, how can you fix that? You can fix that by looking at yourself instead of blaming your partner. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
So that's what we're talking about.
Wow.
So very cool stuff. Yeah, it's great when people get this insight. It has dramatic impact on their relationships when they learn what I teach.
Wow. Thank you so much, Tim.
My pleasure. That's why I'm here. I'm here to teach. I am the marriage professor. That's my nickname I'm giving myself. I'm the marriage professor.
Wow. And now you mentioned something. So how does your relationship affect your finance?
Well, the way I would answer that question, again, from a business perspective. Okay, if you and I are business partners, we're going to discuss our finances as a partnership. Okay, it means I can't go spending money unless you and I agree to it. Right?
Yes.
Okay, that's a partnership. Remember, the solution is a partnership. What it means is when you manage your finances together, because that brings two people, not one, but two people in the conversation. And don't you think two heads are better than one?
Yes, it sure does.
Yeah, but that means you also have to take your partner's financial perspective into consideration as well. You can't make a unilateral dictatorial decision on finances without including your partner. I just got done working with this couple, for example, and the wife, they were talking about this for a long time, but the wife quit her job without telling her husband she was going to quit her job, and that caused a problem. You can't make decisions like that without discussing those with your partner. That's a partnership. That's how you handle finances. Right? It's not complicated. The solutions are not complicated. The problems are complicated. The problems are significantly complicated, but the solutions are easy. Solutions are a lot easier than the problem. That much I can tell you. But people become blind to this. They're called shadows in the psychology world. Okay, a shadow is something that you can't understand because from your perspective, it's a negative experience. Again, say your parents got divorced when you were a kid. Now you have that negative experience in your life and you can't see objectively what a successful marriage looked like because your role model showed you that marriage ends up in divorce. And until you come to terms with that, until you were able to clearly understand what happened in your parents' marriage, you're not going to be able to look at your marriage objectively. You're not going to be able to look at your relationship objectively, which is what you're trying to do. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So
now there is this question that's burning in my heart that I wish to ask, and it goes like this. Two people are in a relationship, and one has made so much sacrifices, giving up everything, and then both of them are in this relationship or in this marriage, and suddenly one discovers that the other one has been having an affair and even having children outside of the home. And yet the other one has been giving up everything for that marriage. What do you do if you find yourself in such a situation? You have given up everything, made every sacrifice you can make, and then you realize that the other one is cheating on you and having kids outside, not just having relationship outside, but having kids outside. What do you do?
Well, infidelity is not the cause of problems in your marriage. Infidelity is the result of problems in your marriage, number one. Number two, there's no such thing as sacrifice in a successful marriage. There's no such thing as sacrifice. What you're saying when you're saying a person is sacrificing, that means they're being controlled. In fact, that's probably why the person cheated on them, is because they have a controlling mentality and they don't look at their partner as their equal, their partner as their partner. So they control their partner and they're not happy controlling their partner any longer. They have to go out and they have to find other conquests. There's no such thing as sacrifice in a successful relationship. Right? That would be the same thing as me saying you can't have the $5,000 computer even though you need it. You have to sacrifice now in order to be in our partnership. That's not a successful partnership. Okay, there's no such thing as sacrifice in a successful partnership. Exactly.
So in that kind of situation, what do you do where you have when you discover that, okay, there has been infidelity is going on and you are there, you've been innocent, you've been doing everything to make it work?
First of all, you're not doing everything to make it work, or else your partner wouldn't be cheating on you. If you have a successful relationship, your partner's not cheating on you. It's not even on the radar screen. The point about your question is you may not comprehend what it means to be in a successful relationship. Those things don't happen in successful relationships.
Wow.
Think about it. Why would you cheat on somebody you're in love with? Right? The goal is not, I said this earlier before you reconnected, but the goal is not to find love. The goal is to find the barriers that you have inside of yourself that's keeping you from fully opening up to love. And when you're sacrificing, that's not fully opening up to love. And when you're controlling, that's not fully opening up to love as well. Controlling imprisons not only the person being controlled, but it also imprisons the person doing the controlling. Okay, here's one of my favorite lines from a song. Once I built an ivory tower so I could worship from above, but when I climbed down to be set free, she took me in again. And what that quote is saying is he was imprisoning himself when he thought he was better than his wife. So he was up here and his wife was down here. But when he came and saw his wife eye to eye as his equal, she brought him in again. What you're describing is most relationships today, where control is the dominant characteristic of that relationship. One or both are trying to control a relationship. Eliminate control, you eliminate the problems. It's that simple.
So how do you eliminate control?
You have to go through this maturing process. The other thing I said before when you were off is the only reason why I could say I have solved the marriage problem is because I forgave my parents when I was 25 years old. A balanced ego is not when you're better than anybody else. It's when you're better than you used to be. And what that means is nobody else can define me. Before I forgave my parents defined me. Right? That's what they're supposed to do. They're raising you. But in fact, you're supposed to be born twice. The first is obvious, biological. But the second is psychological, when you're supposed to be born into adulthood. You can't be happy with yourself until you realize you are who you are. So you have to go through this maturing process, this mental development that allows you to see yourself for who you are, not from other people's perspectives. That's a very significant concept in our culture of divorce.
Wow. That's deep thing.
This whole thing is deep. That's the point.
So yep. It's okay. So I have to go to another question, right?
Sure. Ask away.
So since you've been talking about relationships and marriages, how have you seen it affect marriages and relationships? And
gets them back to where they were at the beginning. What I do is I take couples back to the love that they were at the beginning, and I teach them how to take the right path, the successful path, so their kids in a candy store. They're at the very end of my seminar. I host a free 2-hour seminar. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I can sit down and do the seminar. But at the end of the seminar, I show a sculpture. And the sculpture is two human beings that are sculptured in mesh. And they're literally sitting down with their backs to each other. Okay, so they're back to back. But inside their meshed form of a human being are two little kids looking at each other. The parents are back to back, but the kids are looking at each other. And the description of that sculpture is that being an adult has a lot of benefits, but one we can do without is the immaturity when we're arguing with each other. Because we all have an inner child inside of ourselves that wants to come out and play. That's the way you are at the beginning of your relationship. You just stop playing with each other when you start fighting. So what I'm teaching at the end of the day, the Prince, what I'm teaching is for couples to like each other. They love each other. They fell in love with each other, but they just haven't learned how to like each other yet.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm teaching.
So when they get back to that point of liking each other, then the love can be restored and the relationship can become better.
That's exactly the point. So it's pretty cool to learn this stuff. It's pretty important.
Yeah. Okay. What are some of the things to overcome if you want to build a better relationship?
Well, when you approach it from a mental perspective, you have to overcome your past through forgiveness. Because if you don't, you project your past on your spouse. And the other thing that's important to understand, okay, traditionally speaking, our marriages were based on patriarchy, which is where the man's in charge and the man is the logical side of the relationship. The woman is subordinate and she's responsible for the emotional side of the relationship. In the United States in 1970, less than 1% of all law and medical degrees went to women. By 1990, that number was over half. Women are educated. Women are logical now, just like men. But what men haven't figured out how to be emotional. One of the biggest things I teach is for men to learn to open up their emotional side, because we're taught that an emotional man is a weakness. How can you relate to your emotional wife if you're not emotional as well? Men have to learn to be emotional. When I say that the solution is equality, I mean mental equality. And what mental equality is where the man and the woman get to both think and feel in the relationship.
Wow.
Exactly.
You've talked so much about equality. Can you share with us about equality in a little bit detail? Yeah.
Equality is a partnership. Equality is where you both have to agree on the outcome. You have to agree on the decisions. And where there are no distinctions, there can be no superiority. Perfect equality affords no temptation for abuse or control. This is when you learn to take on the world instead of each other. Mental equality is conflict resolution. And again, I go back to our example of I'm an accountant, you want to buy an expensive computer. How are we going to resolve that? Okay, our partnership is equality, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't tell you what to do and you can't tell me what to do. That's equality. Equality is when you have an equal say. But here's the bigger point about what equality means. Describe to me as best you can, De Prince, what the word equality means to you.
Two people who are equal, two people who understand each other and respect each other.
Okay, let me ask the question this way. Imagine you were a slave. Imagine that you were held in bondage. Somebody owns you as a piece of property. You are a slave. What do you think equality would mean to you then?
There will be no equality then.
What would you want if you were a slave?
Some level of respect.
Freedom.
Okay, freedom.
Right? Think about it. If you're a slave, what do you want? You want freedom.
You want freedom. Yeah.
That's what equality means. There's a reason why Martin Luther King mentions the word freedom 11 times in his I Have a Dream speech. If you create a marriage based on equality, you are free to develop into who you're supposed to be, and your partner is free to develop into who they're supposed to be. That's when it becomes really powerful. Okay? There's a responsibility to equality, though. There's a responsibility to freedom. And that responsibility is you have to give up your limitations. You will find that every problem in a marriage, every single problem in a marriage is a result of a limiting belief. Every one of them. And when you address the limiting beliefs and they go away, you no longer have those limiting beliefs. That's what I do when I work with couples. I address the limiting beliefs that are limiting their relationship from growing. What I'm ultimately doing to Prince is I'm teaching couples how to grow together.
So what are some limiting beliefs that couples have generally?
Low self-esteem. I'm not good enough. You might abandon me because my parents abandoned me. My parents got divorced, so our marriage isn't going to work because my parents' marriage didn't work. These are limiting beliefs. And every problem in a marriage is a result of these limiting beliefs. Every single one of them. Exactly. Get you thinking, right? That's the point.
Yes.
Because I hate to tell you this, to Prince, but God doesn't make mistakes.
Right? God doesn't make mistakes. That's powerful.
God doesn't make mistakes. He didn't make a mistake with you, did he? Did he make a mistake with you?
No.
Of course not. That's what I mean. Okay? You're made in his image. But when people think they're not good enough, they've lost sight of that. God doesn't make mistakes.
So if you say God doesn't make mistakes, oh, that's a tough one.
We make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of us make mistakes. We all make mistakes.
Of course. Yeah.
There's no such thing as a perfect human being. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. I try not to. I work my butt off, but I make mistakes all the time. In fact, one of the things that I teach is couples have to get really good at admitting they made a mistake. That's another problem in marriages. Some people are not able to admit when they made a mistake. It was unbelievable to realize that. I understand it psychologically. I don't understand it from a common sense perspective. But there are actually people in a relationship that will never admit they made a mistake. And it's sad. You can't learn unless you realize you made a mistake.
Yeah. So if God doesn't make a mistake, why do we have people grow up? We have people grow up and experience certain things in their lives. You know, we're talking about happy relationship. So allow me to bring this in. If we say God doesn't make a mistake, then why do we have people grow up and somebody's born, he grows up and he discovers that he's gay and he's not happy about it and he doesn't want to live that life, but he finds himself living that life?
Well, now be careful with that conversation because if he's gay, he's gay. That's who he is. And one of the problems with people who are gay is not their problem. It's the society looks down upon them because they're gay. Okay, I don't know what your society like, but our culture is becoming more and more acceptance of homosexuality. And when I address relationships mentally, I don't care about your gender. This notion of homosexuality is a wrong thing. That's a Christian concept. That's a very bad Christian concept, but it's a Christian concept. The church teaches us that homosexuality is wrong, and that's a big problem with the church, but I'm not here to fix the church. I'm telling you, when it comes to that issue, That's who the person is. Nobody volunteers to be gay. That's one of the most
Hey,
ridiculous
come
things.
on.
I'm not gay. I'm heterosexual, but I could not imagine if I was gay, the stress that I would have to live with, because I know
Mhm.
that people would look differently at me if they were to know that.
Yes. And over here in Africa, it's worst. I mean, when I say it's worst, it's terrible. So you can't even imagine.
What is
So
terrible?
sometimes you see people who tell you that they feel that God made the mistake even in creating them because they find themselves living like that.
Well, that's not because of God, it's because of the society. And this is a very specific topic because this is actually endorsed by the church.
Mm.
Okay, there's been a lot of things. I'm a big history fan of the church, along with everything else. But church has made a lot of mistakes over its history, and this is one of the big ones that they're dealing with now. Is that it's a mistake by the church to say homosexuality is wrong.
Mm.
Okay, but they can find passages in the Bible to support that, just like we can find passages in the Bible to support almost anything, and they're doing that. This notion that I actually wrote my book in Costa Rica. When I was in Costa Rica, I became good friends with this gay couple, older male gay couple. They had 2 kids that were better than most kids that I have met from heterosexual couples. They were better parents than most heterosexual couples.
Whew.
But the church is trying to say, well, you have to have a man and a woman to have a child, which is their only argument against homosexuality, is a biological one. Relationships are mental experiences, as you know if you've ever been in a relationship. It goes beyond the physical, it goes beyond the sex, but when you're really connected with someone, you're connecting with them mentally. And that's what you're trying to figure out.
Mm.
But no, God doesn't make mistakes.
Ooh, wow. Now, and now, Tim, my next question is this. My next question is this. Um, for somebody who is single and alone, how do you find a happy relationship?
Well, the one thing I cannot do is to explain to you who your partner is if you're single. I don't know how 2 people come together, or actually, I explain why 2 people come together, but I can't tell you ahead of time whether this is your partner or not.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, if you want to improve your chances of attracting somebody, become happy with yourself. Because what you'll find out, they're called stepping stones, is that your partner that you don't get married to is there to teach you about something, about yourself or about them. But if you want to attract, here's one of the ways I think about this, the Prince. Okay, don't you want your partner to be happy?
Yeah.
Okay, in order for your partner to be happy and for you to appreciate it, you have to be happy with yourself. Think about this. If your partner's happy and you're unhappy, number one, you're not going to appreciate that your partner's happy, and you're actually going to use that against your partner. I see couples all the time, they'll get mad at their partner because their partner's in a good mood. You will not appreciate somebody who's happy unless you're happy yourself.
Mm. Wow.
Exactly. Very profound stuff. But at the end of the day, the point about this conversation, Prince, is that 2 people can learn how to come together successfully and stay together for life if they want to learn.
Mm.
Right?
Wow. Thank you so much, Tim.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me, by the way. I appreciate
How
it.
many books have you written, Tim?
What?
How many books have you written?
I'm the author of one book and the co-author of another book.
Okay. What's the title of your book?
The title of my book is Equality, and the subtitle is The Quest for the Happy Marriage. And that book is what I use as the foundation. What I do is I work people through that book through it's a 2-month weekly workshop, but that's down the road. But I work people through that book. And by the time they're done working through that book, they will have the habits that they need to learn in order to be successfully married for the rest of their lives. That's how profound the book is. And you saw me talk about that book on that interview you talked about at the very beginning of this.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's all good, though. It's all good.
Thank you so much. As we conclude the show for today, I really appreciate you for coming, and I thank fans and viewers out there, and those that will watch the replay. Please leave a comment. Let us know what the show has done for you today, and leave a comment of appreciation for Team Kellis, and let him know that he has affected lives today. So as we wrap up the show, what's your final word to our audience today?
Well, the way I would conclude this conversation, and I've already said this, the biggest point that I try to convey to people to walk away from my conversation is just realizing you don't know everything. The whole curiosity thing. If there's an exclamation point I want to put on this conversation, it would be that. If you could open your eyes up to be objective to your relationship and realize you don't know everything, it will take your relationship significantly in the right direction. And then the other thing to understand is you're able to see it from your partner's perspective, and your partner's able to see it from your perspective. That solves a lot of problems, because at the end of the day, it's conflict resolution. Be focused and conscious and aware of how to solve your problems in your relationship and work on it. And
Thank you so much.
And understanding the influence of fear on that relationship.
Thank you so much, Tim. That was rich, that was value, that was deep, that's profound. We appreciate you for coming to the show and for all you've shared with us. And we pray that God will bless you richly. And to our fans out there, thank you so much for